Good afternoon. Today is Sunday, June 14th, and I went to church today. I went to a church called Emmanuel Baptist Church here in Ruston, and it was a fairly typical service. The message was called Shaping God's Servants, and the pastor spoke a lot on the book of Exodus, talked a lot about Moses and how he became God's servant. Um, But what I want to talk about today in this series is I kind of want to wrap up like the general commentary segments here and really get into the books of the gospel and really start to open the book and discuss more a more detailed analysis of the gospel and other books of the New Testament. But quick book recommendation. Listened to an audiobook the other day, really good on that subject. It's called Jesus the Messiah by Robert Stein. So that one I definitely recommend. He talks about like textual criticisms and very detailed things about why it's a true story. Like the things that you can differentiate between it being like perhaps a made up story versus an actual true story. So yeah, he really parses it and goes into some really interesting things there. So I recommend that. It's on audiobook. So today, what I want to kind of finish up, just general commentary here is, some of my views might be controversial. They're not necessarily, strictly orthodox views of any kind of one denomination or another, but it's just things that I've meditated on and prayed about, and I'll tell you the strongest the strongest aspect of my faith, to be perfectly honest, has been God's personal revelation to me. His revelations of certain things through certain experiences in my life, that he's like, there's been moments and really whole periods of my life where like I can feel God's presence, and he's like showing me things, and it's through Jesus specifically. I don't know if you've ever noticed, like, I used to kind of doubt like people like, oh yeah, you saw Jesus or you had like this near death experience and you had this, interaction with Christ, like, okay, whatever. But I really believe it nowadays because I've had these experiences myself where it's like only the shape and form of Jesus Christ has been shown to me, revealed to me at certain moments of my life. And what I kind of relate it to is like there's like a room full of clocks, and they all strike in an exact simultaneity with each other. And at that moment in my life, there's Jesus. Like that's kind of the situation. But yeah, so I really do believe those people, though. I really do nowadays. Like, and have you ever noticed like it's only Jesus? It's people don't have like these crazy revelatory experiences with any other like figure, religious figure, anything like that. People don't like come back from having their heart stopped saying like they just had like a meeting with Gandhi or something. I'm just saying. It's always Jesus, even like people that don't really have much of a knowledge about Jesus or anything. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, personally, my own revelations from God via the form of Jesus have been like the strongest aspect of my faith. But that said, the Bible, if you really start studying it, there's plenty to like reinforce the truth of it. For example, like just the brilliance of how God, because obviously there wasn't video or hardly any kind of like media to document things back then, but you see how God, like through the Old Testament, basically has this whole religion established with one of its main drivers, its main motivations is that they're looking for somebody, they're expecting a Messiah. And then boom, there's Jesus. So not only do you have Jesus's unbelievably supernatural, amazing life that, of course, draws that attention just by itself. But the fact that it's reinforced by this whole religion that's actually expecting somebody to come, and then here comes Christ. So it's like this reinforcing mechanism from like the Old Testament, establishing this religion to say, look for somebody. And then somebody comes, has this incredible supernatural life, and of course the Jews don't really recognize him as such, but I mean, the confluence of those like two like truth reinforcing mechanisms is really a stroke of brilliance, if you ask me. But like, how else would you reinforce such a truth way back in ancient times? So anyway, okay, the thing I want to kind of leave you with today before we start opening the book on the individual chapters is here's my assertion or suggestion. All people worship something. We are all in a posture of some degree of worship. I used to worship drugs. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I was a heavy drug user for a long time, and it's something that I basically worshipped. I didn't think I really worshipped it at the time, but and there are nuances. I worshipped certain ways that it made me feel, and I worshipped certain nostalgic parts of using drugs and things like that. But the fact is that when I was taken completely out of that environment and stuck into like a rehab, where all of that was taken away, I really realized like, wow, my whole life was like in this alignment, this like worship posture, mental and everything, towards like this certain identity or whatever, but that was based around drug use. And that was a large part of like what I worshipped for a long time. But what I want to suggest to you is that everybody worships something, whether it's a substance, whether it's it can be something really subtle. It can be your own pride. It can be sex. It can be your job. It can be your something about yourself or somebody else, but or how you feel like your own abilities, your own talents, things like that. But we all worship something, and I want you to ask yourself this week, what do you worship? Or in other words, what is your capital T truth in your life? And you gotta just ask yourself, is that really serving anybody but your own self? And just look deeper, try and look deeply into the motivations and the different characteristics of that worship posture that you're in, and try and look at it from an objective point of view, which is really hard to like step outside yourself. But okay, so we all worship something. Oh, and again, this part of why I feel like this is such a good time to like return to Christ, to repent and to go to find Christ again, is because this whole AI thing, like looming, this whole technological hard takeoff looming that we are about to be confronted with, is going to establish this whole new like set of things to worship. Just this week, I was like, I watch these podcasts, listen to these podcasts and stuff. They're starting to use these terms like, are you a monotheist or a polytheist when it comes to AI? And there's books called like The God Machine and all this stuff. So we have this huge looming thing that's going to be like really starting to demand a certain worship posture from us in the future. And that's why it's a perfect time to realign yourself with Christ, really start digging in, start studying the Word, praying, getting in touch with God as best you can, and start finding your own, spiritual self again through God and through our relationship with Jesus Christ. One more thing, I don't particularly think that a large portion of the church is aligned very well with Christ. I think, like a pastor said the other day at the Presbyterian Church, maybe 10% of like those who like or call themselves Christians are actually in any kind of like alignment, both spiritually and like in a lifestyle, the way they interact with the world, etc., that really reflects Christ. But you can't just toss out everybody. I mean, you gotta, just because there's bad apples in the bunch. I mean, it's like I told my rehab group so many years ago. I was like, just because everybody believes something doesn't mean it's not true, because we're all such rebels. But anyway, that's about all I wanted to say today. So we'll try and start next time by opening the book and looking at the book of Matthew. Have a great week.